Dandapani has spent 10 years in the monastery in Hawaii. I first met him in Bahrain earlier this year. I just spent an awesome 5 days with Dandapani in Istanbul, and Dandapani struck me as a different speaker for you to speak at your conference in Queenstown, New Zealand, March 17 to 21. So what I've asked Dandapani to do, and obviously you're all interested in Dandapani because so many of you on the line. I'll be asking you questions all the way through. What I've asked Dandapani to do is give us an overview of the life in the monastery, 10 years in the monastery. He's been out for close to 4 years now, and how he's translated what he learned over that 10-year period into business. And in the theme with our conference being revolutionizing your clients, your team, your time, and your cash, I'm looking at Dandapani as a different angle to help you do all that. So previously at conferences, we've had tactics and strategy type speakers. You know, whether that be pricing, marketing, selling, client relationships, business strategy, presentation skills, it's all been tactics and strategies. Today with Dandapani and at your conference on March 17, he's actually going to be speaking on March 18, we're going to do something completely different because I think we've got enough tactics and strategies through the Learning Center and through our community. I think it's time for something different. Dandapani, welcome along. Great to have you here.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be in touch with you again. It was really great to see you in Istanbul recently. Thank you so much for having me on this webinar and also for inviting me to Queenstown, New Zealand. I've been there once before. Absolutely awesome place. I think it's one of the most beautiful spots on earth. And I've been very fortunate to travel around the world, quite a lot of places, but Queenstown definitely is very, very special. So thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. So let's start with a question, Dandapani. Let's talk about the 10 years in the monastery, because many people who will be at this conference, and as you know, they're all accountants or all part of an accounting firm, may not have ever met a monk before, and so consequently they may not know, what happens in a monastery and how that translates to business. So give us a few minutes on the life in the monastery, and then we'll look to translating that into business.
Yes, definitely, Rob. I grew up in Perth in Western Australia and actually went to university over there. And when I graduated from electrical engineering at Curtin University, I left immediately after my last exam and found out that I actually passed and joined the monastery in Hawaii, where I lived as a celibate Hindu monk under strict discipline and training for 10 years. The person that founded the monastery in Hawaii was a man named Subramanya Swami. He was actually a American-born person who converted into Hinduism and became a Hindu monk. To me, in my experience, was probably one of the most amazing entrepreneurs I've ever met in my life. He was born in 1927. He's passed away since. And he established a monastery in 1970 in Hawaii. But having trained in his early life in Asia and then moved back to America, he came back to America penniless and built this multi-million-dollar organization, nonprofit organization on Kauai with amazing property, and just his whole method of going about it taught me so much about business, and which I use today in my personal life. But I would say one of the greatest things that I've learned in the monastery was to really get to know me, get to know my mind, and use it as a tool in the same way that I use my Mac as a tool to run my business and my iPhone. I look at my mind, my body, and my emotions as tools, and if I can learn how to use them and use them well, I would be so much more efficient in my everyday life. And that was really the crux of the training that we got in the monastery in 10 years. Sadly, unfortunately, in our education system around the world, we're never really taught how to use the mind. We're never taught how to concentrate. We're never taught how to be disciplined in our thinking and how the mind actually works. Those intricate things are never taught to us. So most people just kind of wing it, to be honest, Rob.
So, Dandapani, 10 years in the monastery, learning these skills of the mind, discipline, and you basically took a vow of celibacy and poverty effectively for 10 years.
Yes.
You told me a story that when you left, because you're now an ex-monk,
yep.
When you left about 4 years ago, you were given $1,000. So you were given $1,000 to go on your way. Tell us about that, because I think that's fascinating in relation to getting established with literally nothing. So tell us about that little journey and what you're doing today for corporations and speaking and writing and traveling the world. So tell us about the $1,000.
Sure. Yeah, when I left the monastery, I literally had nothing, in the sense that before I joined the monastery, I literally had to give up everything. Any money I owned, I gave away to my family, all my CDs, my clothes, anything that I had was given away. So when I left, I literally had nothing. They gave me $1,000 to get started, and they were going to fly me back to Australia. And I said, look, I've got my green card. I want to go to the mainland U.S. And so they bought me a ticket to Los Angeles. I arrived there at midnight with $1,000 cash in my hand, 2 sets of robes, my beads, my earrings, and they were very generous to give me a MacBook Pro laptop to get started, and that's all I had. But people often ask me, wow, that must have been quite a difficult transition for you to go from the monastery to this. Was it scary? And I said, it wasn't. It never was, because I felt so equipped with all these tools that I've learned, all this training that I've acquired, that I was more than ready to embrace life in the world. And one of my goals was to never borrow a single cent from anyone, and I haven't. In the last 4 years, I have not borrowed a single cent from anyone. And my goal was to build my business up on my own, starting with $1,000. And I think, the skills that I learned in the monastery, one of the big misconceptions, Rob, that people have about a monastery, and I think Hollywood has a lot to do with this, is that people think monks just pray and meditate all day, which is not quite the case. We did our meditation and our prayer early in the morning, and the rest of the day, especially in our monastery, it was quite amazing what the monks did. We learned desktop publishing, we learned how to build websites, we learned how to edit movies in Final Cut Pro. Monks ran multi-million-dollar endowments. We learned about life planning for membership, estate planning, all kinds of things, and we did it all ourselves with no outside help at all. So a very highly accomplished group of monks with a really unique set of skills. And so what I'm doing now is trying to take these skills that I've learned, especially the ones on understanding the mind and learning how to concentrate, and those really deeper skills that have to do with your own personal life, and sharing it with business owners and organizations, and teaching people how they too can learn these skills and then improve their personal lives, and therefore improve their family life, their business life, and have a greater effect in everything that they're doing, really.
So 4 years later, you've now got a thriving business, which is education business, speaking business, and I've seen on 2 occasions this year, and certainly spending a day with you in a workshop in November, which will be fabulous. These skills and teaching business people, these accountants are business people. What sort of skills are we talking about? What sort of disciplines are we talking about?
Okay. I would say one of the first things I always focus with business people is really learning how to use your mind. I think that's the one thing most people aren't ever taught at all. Here's this amazing tool that we have, but nobody really teaches us how to use it. I mean, if you really look at your life and ask yourself, when in primary school or kindergarten or high school or in college were you really taught how to use your mind? Never. But it's like picking up a software. If you pick up Photoshop or QuickBooks or Excel, and if you don't know how to use it, you're just sitting there and all you're doing is just hitting keys like a monkey, and you're not being efficient at all. So the idea here is to really learn how to use your mind so then you can be much more effective in everything else you do. So that's my first goal, is at a conference next year, your conference, Rob, next year in March, is to really teach everyone how the mind works, how to use it very effectively, and then from there teach them how to concentrate as well. And what's so interesting, Rob, I've traveled to more than 40 countries around the world, and I always ask this one question when I do workshops with people. Ask, how many of you here have learned how to concentrate? And you'd be amazed. I probably had like 1 or 2 people ever put up their hands. Everybody's told how to concentrate, but they're never taught how to.
Yeah, everyone's told, focus on one thing at a time, manage your time, be efficient, and we're no different, Dandapani, with these accounting firms. We say to them, this is how you become efficient, but we never touch on, what's going on upstairs as to, how you actually apply the tactic of being efficient, and in our world, the accounting business's world, the job of efficiency is get the materials in and get them completed and finish the job as fast as possible. But along the way, they get distracted. Yep. They have a job pick up and put down, and inefficiencies cause excess time on job, low profitability on job, and it throws the cash out as well. So it's an interesting perspective to take it right back to what you're thinking about and how you think and how you concentrate, as well as those tactics and strategies to implement.
It is. To just give you a very simple example, I had a friend of mine here in New York City where I live who was using this program called Adobe Lightroom to manage photographs that he takes. He never spent any time learning the program, so he opens the program every time, clicks around, tries to make it work. And it's so inefficient. So I said to him one day, hey, why don't we just sit down for 2 hours and I'll show you exactly how the program works, and you can be so much more efficient at it because now you actually know what all of these buttons do. And if you take the same perspective with your mind, if you could really understand how it worked and how patterns are created, positive patterns, negative patterns are created, how to change negative patterns and create positive patterns, how to concentrate, you would be so much more efficient in a day. And not only in your business life, but also in your personal life. And one of the interesting things, Rob, when I left the monastery, I traveled around the U.S. for a little while, mainland U.S., and finally when I came to New York City, I said, this is a perfect place for next month. Because I thought, if I can practice all the tools that I'm sharing here in New York City and actually live here, run a successful business, and live the lifestyle that I'm sharing with other people to live, then I feel like I'm justified to share this with other people. Because New York, as great as it is, it's a little bit crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been there a number of times. It's a crazy place. So, taking that the concentration of the mind, is this all about discipline, Dandapani, or how are we going to do that?
First comes understanding. Once we understand how it works, then we need to figure out the next step, which is how do we apply it in our everyday life. And then comes, once we figure out how to apply it, then we need to be able to practice it. So here's the big thing that people don't realize. They don't realize that whatever you practice, you become good at. So imagine if in 10 hours of working in your office, and I'm sure most of these accountants will work more than 10 hours. For 10 hours of working in your office, if you're being distracted for 10 hours constantly, that's what you become really good at. So if I wanted to be a really good tennis player, I'd probably have to train 10 hours a day to be a really good tennis player. So imagine if you're practicing being distracted or inefficient 10 hours a day. After 6 months, you would be really great at being distracted, and you'd be really great at being inefficient. And after 1 year, you could probably run seminars. And after 2 years, you'd probably give keynote speeches, on this. You could be on TED Talks teaching people how to be inefficient.
And then create a product and, multiply your efforts and get people to do the same thing, and you've got this multi-million-dollar business on being efficient. Love it.
I love it. This is my copyright, though.
You can take it. Oh, no, I don't think it'll sell.
Exactly. So I think what I try to teach people is not only to understand these things, how they work, but how to integrate it into their everyday life, and then to be able to create very simple ways to practice this, not only at work, but at home, but basically in the 24-hour period in their life. And I'm not talking about sitting down 10 minutes in the morning to do meditation or anything like that. I actually bring concentration exercises into a person's life. And to give you an example, Rob, so one of the things that I always tell people to do is do one thing at a time. And that's basically what concentration is keeping your awareness on one thing for a prolonged period of time. So if you were to integrate that practice into your everyday life, then when I'm speaking, for example, take me for example, when I'm speaking with somebody on the phone, That's all I do. I speak with them on the phone. I don't check my email. I don't tweet. I don't update my Facebook status. Nothing. When I'm driving, I drive. When I'm cooking, I cook. If I'm sweeping the floor, I sweep the floor. Because what I'm doing then in the course of the 24 hours in a day, I'm practicing the art of concentration. So when I actually sit down on my computer and work, I've had so many hours of practice of concentration already behind me. Now I'm so much more efficient. When I look at a problem, I see solutions much clearly because I am so concentrated and focused on it. And out of concentration comes this wonderful quality of insightfulness. You know, when you look at a problem and if you're really concentrated, you're able to, concentration gives you the ability to kind of give more of a mountaintop perspective is what I would like to call it. When you stand on top of a mountain, you can look down and get a big overview of the problem and go, yep, now I see what the problem is and I'm able to solve it. When you're not concentrated, you're almost at the bottom of the mountain and you're kind of caught in the whole mess of it. And that's where you become inefficient. So I make sure that when I'm hanging out with my wife, I just hang out with my wife and she has my undivided attention for the time I'm with her. And I integrate this into everything that I do in my life so that when I actually come to work, I'm so much more efficient in everything that I do. So this is some of the things that I would teach the accountants or share with them and how to make, how to use these tools in a really practical, simple way in their everyday life. So they don't feel like, wow, this guy is telling me to take 10 minutes out of my day to meditate. No. It's something I won't even ask them to do, but to already bring these tools into whatever it is they're already doing, but to just do it in a slightly different way. Does that make sense, Rob?
Absolutely. Now, Dandapani, what I'd like to do on this webinar, and I should have pre-framed this at the start, because we've got, you know, hundreds of people listening in. I'd like to make it a bit interactive, and more so to give you some feedback afterwards, so we can really customize the workshop on the 18th of March. As to what the attendees or the accountants and their business managers are looking for. So what I'd like to do is to ask a question and of everyone listening in, and if you could just put in your chat bar there, we'll collate those questions, the answers to the questions, and send them back to Dandapani so he can actually you know, target areas. So my first question, I'm going to ask a few of these. My first question around concentration for all those listening in is if you could concentrate more and if you could teach your team, because I presume, Dandapani, we're also going to teach the participants how to teach their team members to do these skills as well. Is that the case?
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Awesome. Great. So they'll take those skills away, and the first one's concentration. So my question is, if you could concentrate more and if you could teach your team to concentrate more, what difference would that make in your firm and in your life? And the answers to that will be anonymous. Dandapani will not single you out and say, you know, you over there are going to improve that or whatever. It's more so to shape the conversation. So answer the question if you can in the chat. By concentrating more, what impact, what difference would that make on your business and your life? If you could just plug those answers into the chat, and the team will collate those. Awesome. Let's do those now, please. And now, Dandapani, so concentration. Let's talk about one of the subjects I love hearing you talk about, which is managing energy, which is, you know, instead of managing time, managing energy. What's your ideas around that, and then how can that be applied?
Okay. A lot of people say time management is similar to energy management, and I think they're two completely different things. To give you an example, if you're spending 20 minutes with your wife, and you say, okay, each day, okay, let's give a different example in terms of timing. You budget 1 hour to spend with your children and 1 hour with your wife every day, so 2 hours with your family. So that's part of your time management. But in those 2 hours, you're not necessarily with them. Physically you are, but mentally you could be thinking about work, you could be thinking about, you know, issues that you're having with your employees, you could be texting, you could be emailing, and that's something I hear quite often from business people. They say, yeah, I'm having dinner with my wife, I'm sitting there with her having dinner, but most of the time I'm thinking about something else. So wherever your awareness goes, that's where your energy flows. And that's a really simple statement that you can always keep in mind.
Can you just repeat that, Dandapani?
Yep.
Did you say, because the line was a bit fuzzy there, wherever your awareness goes, your energy flows? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes. Where your awareness goes, your energy flows. So even though you're physically sitting there with your wife having dinner, but your awareness is off at work or somewhere else, then that's where your energy is flowing. So when we talk about energy management, we're really talking about keeping awareness on one thing for a prolonged period of time. And that's where your energy is concentrated on one thing. And when your energy is concentrated on one thing, then that particular thing it's concentrated on starts to grow. And really, if you look at your life, it takes more energy to disengage from project number 1, go to project number 2 for 30 seconds, and then come back to project number 1 again, rather than stay on project number 1 the whole time. If you looked at your awareness as a car and energy as fuel or gasoline, you require gasoline to drive or petrol to go from A to B and come back from B to A. So you wasted so much energy being distracted. So what we learn to do here is really, in this whole concept of energy management, is how can you keep as much energy as you can in your everyday life so that you can hone it and concentrate it on the things that really matter to you and on the people that really matter to you. And part of this exercise, Rob, is really identifying what I would like to term as energy vampires in your life. You know, people who literally suck energy out of you because it's just negative. They're not positive people. They're not optimistic. They're just people that really drain you. How to identify people like those in your life? How to identify things in your life that could be really draining as well? And then how to slowly, for lack of a better word, eliminate these people and things from your life. And once you start doing that, you have all this excess energy, which then you can direct to the people that you love or the people that matter to you and to the things that matter to you. So I think one of the big things, you know, living in New York has really taught me is to manage my energy because there's so much going on here. I mean, you said you've been here. You know how energetic the city is. It never sleeps, right? And if you allow yourself to get caught up with the city, you'd be completely drained. So I know every time I go into Manhattan and I'm having meetings with people, I'm very mindful of where my energy is going. And I learn how to manage it so that when I actually go back to work, I haven't lost all this energy unnecessarily with people and things that don't really matter in my life.
So, Dandapani, you're talking about managing energy in the context of focus, discipline, concentration, and also making sure that the people around you are not sucking that energy from you. And for an accounting firm, you know, that's going to cover a number of areas. It'll cover their immediate partners in their business. Mm-hmm. It'll cover their team members, their employees. Yep. It'll cover their suppliers and vendors. Mm-hmm. It'll cover their clients, and it'll also cover their friendships, and also their relationships, and also their other social circles. So yes. Are you saying that anyone who's an energy sucker, we should quote-unquote unfriend them? Is that what we're saying here?
Like a Facebook unfriend?
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit easier to do, I suppose, in your social circles, but much harder to do if it's in the workplace. If you have an employee that's who's really draining you of your energy. So what I really teach people how to do is how to deal or how to really work with those kind of people, and how to, the term that I'd like to use is how to be affectionately detached from these people. So just say you have a partner who does drain your energy, or you have an employee that does drain your energy, and you have to work with them and you can't necessarily fire them for whatever reason. Then how do you work with them but at the same time not allow them to drain you? because we all have those people in our lives, right, Rob? I mean, we meet somebody and we spend a half an hour with them, and then we walk away and we feel completely exhausted.
So let's do a snap poll here, and the answer to my question is a number, everyone, just a simple number, and we're going to collate these answers for Dandapani on the average number of people around you, whether they be work people, clients, whether they be social influence, family members. How many would you consider, is the question, how many would you consider to be energy sappers, energy suckers? Just plug a number in, and that'll be an interesting score, Dandapani, to see, okay, of the people that responded, the average was X.
And to give you a real life example, you know, I work with people all around the world in my speaking engagements and retreats and projects that I do, and there are some people in my life, in my business life, that are energy suckers. They really are. But I've learned and trained myself not to get drained by their presence. Because I have to work with them, I don't really have a choice in one sense. So I've learned to be affectionately detached so that even though I spend half an hour with them, I don't get drained at the end of it. And that's, I think, the real key thing to, which I hope to convey and teach people how to integrate into their lives at the conference.
So, thank you, Dandapani. You talk about 3 key areas of your life, and in the order of these 3 key areas. Could you elaborate on what those 3 areas of your life are, and why you rank them in these 3 areas?
Okay. I think for me, looking at the 3 areas, I would define them as my personal life, my family life, which includes also my friends, my close friends, my family, my relatives, and then my business. And if I were to rank them, I would rank my personal life first as being the most important, even though this seems selfish. Second, my family and friends. Third, my business life. And the way I look at it, it's almost, to give you a very simple example, when you get on a plane and they go through the whole emergency procedure, and when they tell you that oxygen mask drops down, they tell you to put it on yourself first before putting it on your child. And if you really think about it, there's a reason why they ask you to do that. If you can really help yourself and work with yourself and improve yourself, you really improve everyone else around you. I know in my life that when I'm feeling together and positive, then people around me feels that way. My wife feels that way. My family feels that way. But if I'm feeling down and sad and depressed and anxious, stressed, then that feeds off. It feeds off into my wife. It'll feed off into the children. It'll feed off into friends around you. And that's how most people are. And it affects your employees, how they respond to you, how they work. They might say, hey, Rob's feeling really stressed today. He's taking it out on me. But if you could really manage yourself, then you'll find everything around you starts to change from the inside out. And I think this is a really, really important concept that I learned in the monastery. Though it seems selfish, it's really not. And it's something that I work with a lot of business people and teach them to focus on, is really focus on themselves first, get them to work with their lives, change their lives, improve their lives, and in doing so they improve their businesses, their employees, their partners, and also their family life.
So with that, are you talking about fitness, me time, time alone? What are you talking about with your personal life? What do you mean?
Okay. All of those things that you mentioned, Rob, one of the things I tell business people to do, or even anybody that I train, is to take a little time out for themselves each day. It's so interesting, Rob, in today's world, people will make time for everybody else except themselves. When that phone rings, they'll pick it up. Text message beeps on their phone, they'll respond to it, or they'll at least look at it. But if you ask them to take 2 minutes out for themselves each day, most people won't be able to do that. But if you don't even invest any time in yourself, how can you improve as a person? How can you become more efficient? How can you're basically not doing any self-maintenance, really. That's what it is. Everything that you have is being externalized. So the way I look at it, I mean, I spend, on most days, at least an hour to an hour and a half in the morning doing my meditative practices and a bunch of these other tools that I share with myself. Because I know if I can do this every day and practice this every day, my personal life will improve, my family life will improve, my business life will improve. And it really has. And also including things like exercising, working out, building those kind of things to your routine, eating healthy. And if we're not good in those things, then we really need to learn how to do that better.
So, Dandapani, my next question for the listeners here is, I'd like an honest answer to this, because I think this is really, really important and something I've been doing personally for a long, long time. Not so much meditating, every day, but it's more so I spend time with myself every day, just quietly, just doing whatever I'm doing, thinking, reading the newspaper, or, I play a lot of golf, so I play golf on my own sometimes, and that's my time, just to, I'm not talking for an hour and a half or 2 hours if I'm playing 9 holes or practicing, for example. Not talking to a soul. It's pointless talking to yourself, right? So I'd like to ask a question, and I'd like you to the answer is in minutes, so number of minutes. Today, or yesterday going backwards, because you may change as a result of listening to this today, how much time realistically do you spend on your own, just you, no interruptions, no noise, with yourself, doing, just on your own? And this is not, being in the shower or anything like that, because that's performing a task, where you're not actually performing a task. So if you could plug that answer in minutes, and that'll be an interesting one as well, Dandapani, to say, okay, the average person in this room is spending X minutes per day only. And if it's none, that's fine, on themselves every single day.
For sure, Robin, just to make a small extra little point on this is that, for example, if you had a client and the client came up to you and said, look, I could use your services, you'd spend time with them, right? The more time you spend with your client, the more you really understand what he or she wants, and better you're able to serve them. But the only way to get to know someone is by spending time with that person. And the only way to get to know yourself and to know what you want or need is to really spend time with yourself. And if you don't, and if you always preoccupy yourself with TV or the internet or with work, family, friends, social life, then you never really get to see exactly what it is you want and where it is you want to go and how you can actually get to where you want to go.
Awesome. Let's talk about the subject that you often open up with, and that is death.
Yes.
Your views on death and dying, and bringing that back to today.
It's really, to me, this has been a big part of my life. I was recently in Istanbul with you for the Entrepreneurs Organization Conference. I remember on the first day, an entrepreneur from Canada asked me, he said, Dandapani, how often do you think about dying? I said, hardly ever. But the one thing I do think about quite often, I said to him, is that I know my time on earth is limited. Because as far as I know, I've not met anybody who's lived 1,000 years or more, or even 200 years or more. So I know my time is very limited. And because I know my time is limited, I know I need to use it efficiently and effectively. So I think one of the big problems with today's society is that people give themselves this infinite lifespan. They never think they're going to die. And because they never think they're going to die, they're always putting things off, and they're not really focusing all the energy on the things that matter and on the people that matter. But when you realize that you could potentially die at any point in time, today, tomorrow, next week, next year, then you start realizing, well, I think I really need to be focused here. with my life, I really need to prioritize what's important in my life, what projects are important in my business, what projects are not important, what clients are important, what clients are not important, family members, who in the family is important, which friends are important to me. Because I think the most important thing to realize also is that you only have X amount of energy every day. And just to put a number to it, say you have 100 joules of energy each day when you wake up. And if you were to divide that between everybody and everything you had to do, you'd be out of it. And that's why most people are so exhausted at the end of the day. It's because they don't really budget their energy in an effective way. But the concept of death makes you realize that I really need to be wise on where I invest my energy on a daily basis. And that's what I do. You know, I live in New York City. It's so easy to get distracted and sucked into a million different things over here. But I'm very mindful. I'm mindful that I could potentially die at any point in time, so I wisely invest my energy in the right things and the right people in my life.
Well, Dandapani, we could talk for hours, but I'm going to save the big content piece, if you like, for the conference, because we've got you for a day. We're honoured to have you to fly out all the way from New York. And are you staying for the whole conference? Is that the idea? Or are you just coming for the day? What's the plan?
Totally up to you, Rob. If you're going to take me golfing, I'll stay the whole time.
Okay, cool. Well, we have one of the most ultra-exclusive golf courses in the world, which is the Hills, and in Queenstown. It's a similar idea to Augusta in America as far as exclusivity, and I'm proud to be a member of that course. So we're doing a golf day there, so I'm more than happy to take you golfing.
Like it.
A really cool place. Actually, it was built by an entrepreneur, Michael Hill. He runs a $500 million jewelry enterprise. So,
oh wow,
he spoke at our conference a couple of years back.
Very nice.
So Dandapani, this day we're going to spend together. We're going to talk about these subjects, or you are, and you were telling me earlier on, we're actually doing some specific exercises and training and practicing exercises, so that this can flow through to the team members of the accounting firm, the clients of the accounting firm, of course, their personal time, and ultimately, as I said to you, the three key areas that our accountants are interested in is, number one, building a better business, for building a better business that they've already got, also to help their clients build better businesses, and making sure they live a fabulous life as part of that. So I know that the workshop that you've got planned for us, we're just going to snippets out of this last 40 minutes. The workshop is going to be fabulous. Any parting comments from you before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things I should share also about the workshop that we're going to do next March is that we're definitely going to focus on a lot of practical tools. And these are tools that are simple and practical and easily implemented into your life, into the accountant's life, to all the attendees, and then they can actually take it back and then teach their employees how to apply those tools into their lives as well. I think that's a key area that I plan to focus on. So it's not only for all the attendees, but also for the employees back home, and how they can go back and help the employees implement this in their everyday life as well, so that they can really build a more efficient team overall.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to connecting with you again in November.
Yes.
So those that have registered, fabulous. You'll get to see Dandapani live. He's hanging around for the whole program, so you get to spend some personal time over a drink at the bar, or whatever your taste is, which will be fabulous. And also, that's Dandapani will be speaking on March 18, Queenstown, New Zealand. Dandapani, thank you very much, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Rob. A real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in November.